What up, Kings fans? We're here, we're drinking beer, and we're talking about your Sacramento Kings. What's up, guys? Welcome back to Royal Rebounds TV and another Royal Rebounds podcast with Calvin and Barry. Today, we are discussing NBA Media Day, specifically your Sacramento Kings. But before we dive into that, I want to welcome you all back to the channel. If it's your first time, Calvin and I here, we both put out Sacramento Kings content almost every day. We love the Kings. We love to cover the Kings. We have a podcast a few days a week. Also, starting October 22nd, we will be debuting season number 2 of the Royal Report. It's an ESPN style show every Friday, only on YouTube, only found on this channel. Please make sure you guys like this video if it's your first time to the channel, or if you want to find out more content by us. Make sure you guys hit that subscribe button down below, and also make sure you hit that cowbell to find out when Calvin and I put out a new video. All right, so we're going to jump right into the main topic today, the official start of NBA Media Day, which means we have started NBA training camp this season. We got to see a bunch of interviews by Sacramento Kings players, coaches, all excited for this upcoming season. We do know that Monday, October 4th, is the first preseason game against the Suns, and then the Kings start the season on October 20th against the Trailblazers. But before we dive into that, Calvin, what are we drinking today?
Keeping it simple today, we are drinking Modelo Especial. Sometimes after a long, hard day, you just need a nice, refreshing Mexican cerveza.
My favorite on Taco Tuesdays.
Oh, yes.
Lots of fun. All right, so I think it's safe to say that De'Aaron Fox stole the show. He showed up. He looks a hell of a lot different than he normally looks. He looks like he's gained some weight. He's gained some facial hair. He's got more confidence. He's got a big beaming smile. He seems like he is ready to take it to the next step this season, and we are really, really excited about it. But Calvin, who impressed you the most?
Well, I would definitely say De'Aaron Fox did. It's hard not to. Like you said, he showed up. He didn't even have to say anything, and he had a very different presence about him. Everybody was pretty much gawking at him throughout the entirety of his media day and his interviews. It's an interesting day in general. You know, typically it's hard for me anyway to really learn much from these interviews because, and again, you got to put yourself in the position of the player here. It's such a monotonous process. You sit down, you take pictures, you talk to media members for hours upon hours. You get asked the same version of a question hundreds and hundreds of times, which is why you typically get these cliche answers, and there's not really much real substance or information given in a lot of these interviews. But De'Aaron Fox, I think, actually said a lot of really interesting things. He was really engaging, like you said, very energetic. He seems really, really ready to play. Obviously physically fit and ready to go. I really loved what he said today, though. He specifically talked about getting more physical, gaining strength so that he can compete defensively on a nightly basis. My favorite thing that he said was he really wants to become a more efficient scorer this year, which to me is the one step to his game that takes him to another level. That's free throws, hitting threes with more consistency. So he really said specific things. He talked about the camaraderie and the competition level with the guys in practice. I think it's a very exciting time to be a Kings fan based on the star players' level of readiness and excitement to play this year.
Yeah, he definitely looks like he's ready to be a whole new De'Aaron Fox, a new and improved version of himself this coming season. I know he talked about some changes this offseason as far as workouts, what he's been doing to prepare his body. But the thing that resonated with me the most in his preparation this offseason, or what helped him pack on these extra pounds, was just eating more. And I know that sounds like a simple thing, but as you and I...
Trust me, it is not.
As you and I both know, being skinny guys growing up, eating when you're not hungry and just forcibly eating and eating and eating is very, very monotonous, and it's very difficult. And, you know, De'Aaron Fox says he has a chef traveling with him all the time, We know he's engaged now to his chef. But he just eats and eats and eats. You could work out all day long, but as long as your diet's not up there to par with it, you know, the results are not going to show. So it looks like he's finally got his diet right, which is great. And obviously, you know, getting older,
I was just going to say that. Yeah,
helps
coming
a lot
of
too.
age. You know, he was just a kid when he came into this league, and he's a man now. So
yeah, he's definitely looking like a man, talking like a man, acting like a man. And, you know, he also touched on the new contract, new expectations for him, but he focused more on what he wants from this Kings team. And he reiterated that he wants this team to make the playoffs. He wants them to play well. And one thing that he did mention was he said a lot of these good teams are older. They have more experience. And so the Kings are getting older every year. De'Aaron Fox is getting older. I know Tyrese has only been with the team for 1 year, but he's getting older. Marvin Bagley's getting older. Harrison Barnes. You know, this was the youngest team in the NBA 2 seasons ago, and they are maturing right in front of our eyes, and they seem to be poised to make a run this year.
Yeah, it totally seems as though things are really falling into place for this team. Every person that talked today, whether it was a coach or a player, the things that I heard consistently the most in everybody's interviews were high level of competition, physicality, and defensive attention to detail on defense. That's what's being preached right now. The guys have been working out, you know, together for a number of weeks already. Like De'Aaron Fox said, they've been playing 5-on-5 for a while now, and they're going at each other. And they're a more physical team this year, which they all realize they need to be that in order to take them where they need to go. And it's easier said than done. You know, every team in the league is going to come into this day and say, we want to be on the same page. We're dedicated to winning. All of that stuff is good. But it's another thing to go out there and do it, and that remains to be seen. But, you know, Coach Walton was asked specifically about competition level and there being potentially starting spots available and up for grabs. And his face just lit up when that question was asked. He said that he loves it, and he really, really is happy about having guys competing day in and day out in practice. And I do think that that's going to help this team in the long run.
Yeah, well, De'Aaron Fox is clear-cut the best player on this roster. So when you're looking for help on your team, you want to light fires under the guys around you. You want to have them battling, challenging you to get better, because not only does that drive you to be a better player, but it also helps them kind of close that gap and get a little bit closer. So very happy to see that. I also noticed Tyrese Haliburton put on some weight too this offseason. I know he joked around a couple days ago about De'Aaron Fox calling him fat and all this. He certainly doesn't look fat to me. He looks like he's gained a little bit of weight. He said between 10 and 15 pounds. But just like De'Aaron Fox, his goal was not pounds. It was strengthen. It was doing things that are going to help him on the court. And he looks like he's ready to go as well.
Tyrese had, to me, one of those interviews where it was sort of just like a going through the motions type thing. You couldn't really gain a lot of specific information from him. But the one thing that I was really impressed with about him is that this, even though it's his second year in the league, this is his first media day. They didn't do this last year. They were all on Zoom calls. It was a much shorter process. And, you know, sometimes guys, Tyrese is one of those infectious personality type people, but sometimes that can put people in a deer in the headlights type of position. And he seemed very relaxed, very, very comfortable. I think he is really, really at home with this team. He likes where he's at. He likes the guys around him. I think you can say that for all of them. And so I was really impressed with just his overall level of comfortability, being still very young in this league and on this team.
Yeah, and you know, we talked about the difficulties of last year with the shortened season and COVID and all this stuff. But, you know, now that I think back on it, having last year and then going into this year kind of gives you a little bit of a boost as a rookie, right? Like it was kind of an easing in period into the NBA versus normally you get drafted right away. There's all those bright lights. There's millions of people. You know, he didn't have all that. He had some success last year. He played really well. He did play in front of some packed arenas. But for the most part, Tyrese Haliburton kind of eased into the NBA, which I think really, really helped his progression. Do you foresee Davion Mitchell potentially having some hiccups this year because he didn't have that ease in that Tyrese Haliburton did?
I don't see that happening, and I think that's basically just going to be because of Davion's personality. Everyone, literally everyone that's ever come in contact with him talks about one thing, and that's his focus and his work ethic. I don't think he's the type of guy that is really fazed by anything outside of what he's trying to accomplish. I think he's got a lot to prove, and I think he's ready to just get out there and play. So, and I also believe that the Kings are going to put him in a position to succeed this year. He's not coming in as the new starting point guard that the franchise's shoulders are on. You know, they have that person already. So he can really just fill in the gaps, do what he does best. And I think that high level of competition that they have at the guard position and the fact that they're going to be really flexible in the types of lineups that they play is going to hugely benefit him this year.
Yeah, and you know, there's been a lot of talk about 3-guard lineups this year, 3-guard sets. But if you look at ESPN's official depth chart, he's the third-string point guard.
Yes.
So I don't think there's a lot of responsibility that comes with that. I don't think there's a lot of pressure that comes with that. I think if Davion's willing to live up to the moment, I think he'll get more playing time. Obviously, starters are different than finishers. We talked about that with Marvin Bagley and with Tyrese Haliburton, and also with Buddy Hield. But I think Davion's going to have a good season. But he's easing into the NBA in a little different way than Tyrese.
Yeah, and he also, you know, last offseason was incredibly difficult for a bunch of other reasons. And this offseason, this upcoming training camp and preseason are going to be sort of back to business as usual. So I think that's going to help not just Davion, but all the rookies in general. And being able to go back and play in front of fans, you know, that's why you play the game, right? It's to entertain the fans and put on a show, and that's why everybody's here. So I think he's in a good position. I do want to touch on something that Coach Walton said. You talked about the 3-guard lineups. Again, you know, it's hard to really take away a lot from what's said in these conversations or in these interviews, but he was asked about lineups and starting positions and things like that, and he did mention how thrilled he is to have a guy like Davion on the team, that they are going to, in the preseason, actively move him around the court, play him defensively against bigger defenders to see kind of what's the height range that they can have him go up against. And he also mentioned having really good conversations recently with Buddy Hield about what it's going to take for Buddy to accept, you know, fit in his role on this team, what he needs to do for the Kings to be successful. And I'm not saying that Davion's going to start playing more minutes than Buddy necessarily, but to me that does kind of sound like Coach Walton is really, really anticipating having an opportunity to use this 3-guard lineup. And maybe that means Buddy Hield moves down into the 3 or you know, plays in a different capacity than he has in the past. But I do think you're going to see a lot of those guys on the court for the whole season.
Yeah, and one thing that I saw in the Monty McNair interview, which was echoed in Coach Walton's interview, was they were just so happy to have all these different guys, all these different pieces that are good at doing certain things. So they're going to be able to throw a ton of different lineups out there. You know, maybe it's not depending on Buddy or depending on Davion. Maybe it's depending on who they're playing. But I also want to touch on what you'd mentioned earlier, and a couple of the guys mentioned in interviews, was physicality, defense. They're not going to get pushed around anymore. And there's a guy on the coaching staff that they brought in this year that is that to a T, and that's Doug Christie. And we watched the Marvin Bagley interview. Marvin Bagley's gained some weight too. He put on some pounds as well. But he talked about working with Doug Christie before practice, before lifting, I think Doug Christie is going to have a huge role on this year's Sacramento Kings team and a huge impact as well.
I don't see how he couldn't. The guy's been obviously so connected and close to the franchise for a number of years, multiple decades now. He's worked with them in different capacities. He's seen every game that's been played for the last however many years, and he was a very successful player in his own right and has a lot of useful things to teach these guys, I'm sure. I was also very impressed and surprised by the fact that Marvin Bagley's been working one-on-one with him so much. Mm-hmm. You know, that I would have expected maybe Tyrese Haliburton or somebody else to have gotten into that role, that situation so quickly. He's got the pulse of the team, obviously, right, from having been around them for so long, and he realizes that Marvin's a guy that we need to be happy and be on the same page and be ready to go with all of us. So that's a really important thing, I think.
Yeah, I think last week you and I talked about the X factor on the Kings, and I think that might end up being Marvin Bagley. You know, if Marvin has a 2010 season, if he's healthy, if he's available, if he's playing good basketball, the Kings are going to succeed this year. And I think Christie is smart enough to realize that. And I think he looks around the team and he says, okay, Fox is set. Obviously, he needs a lot of work and help, but he doesn't need me right now. You look at Tyrese Haliburton. He's well on his way. The guy that's falling behind, and I don't say that in a negative way, I just say the guy that probably needs help the most right now from a guy like Doug Christie is Marvin Bagley.
Yeah. Yeah.
So his ability to identify that and attack that makes me even more ecstatic and happy about this upcoming season.
Mm-hmm. The most intriguing person to listen to them talk was going to be Buddy Hield, just because I knew what all the questions were going to be based on. You know, obviously this guy was in a deal, traded to the Lakers, so nobody expected him to be here or at Media Day. And I was really impressed with what he said, not because of the types of answer or the words necessarily that he gave specific to those questions about still being in Sacramento. He said all the right things, and I expected him to. He wants to be here. He's ready to play, all that stuff. But I had this moment watching him where you really realize that these guys are human. You know, we tend to think of them as pawns and trade pieces, and you move this guy here, you move this guy there, and that's how you build a team. And it is that at its fundamental level. But these guys are human beings, and they've got emotions. And I think he really handled himself very well through that whole process. I liked his answer specifically about vaccinations. He was asked directly about that. And not only did he correct the reporter on what the rule is in terms of being able to play, but he also gave a very, very diplomatic answer on being vaccinated, what it means, and how every player should have their right to do what they think is best for them. And I also really liked the fact that when he was questioned specifically about being traded to the Lakers, Tristan Thompson, a guy who has been on this team for a half a second, came up to the podium and immediately grabbed the mic and came to his defense. Mm-hmm. So that speaks to the relationships that these guys have. It also speaks to Tristan Thompson's veteran leadership, something that he's going to bring to this team. And it was a refreshing thing to see.
Yeah, and you and I talked about this offseason, what to expect from Buddy Hield this upcoming season, especially bringing in another guard, what might happen. And they touched on that in the interview, and Buddy Hield made it clear that he's willing to do whatever the team needs to succeed. I don't think we could have heard a better answer out of him. All right, well, we want to thank you all for joining us on another Royal Rebounds podcast. Make sure you guys hit that like button down below. If you would like to join the Royal family, make sure you hit that subscribe button. And if you'd like to find out when Calvin and I put out a new video, make sure you hit that cowbell down below as well. We'll catch you in the next one. And in the meantime, go Kings.
Go Kings.